I think that's part of it, but I think there is definitely more to this than just a condescending attitude. I think ultimately the crux of the matter is Niger's choice of military partners, and specifically the choice of Russia. The US clearly seems to be frustrated that Niger is moving closer and closer in terms of military cooperation.
How might the West react upon discovering a secret uranium deal between Iran and Niger? Following Niger's ban on French uranium mining within its borders, the country has been quietly planning its next steps. Now, the secret is out. Niger has signed a $56 million uranium deal with Iran. Upon learning of this deal, France is likely to resort to propaganda, attempting to convince the public that this agreement poses a significant threat. However, can they stop Niger and Iran from moving forward with their plans? Let's find out. Iran has reportedly inked a $56 million deal with Niger to acquire 300 tons of refined uranium, commonly referred to as yellow cake. This clandestine agreement follows the recent decision by Niger's military junta to cancel the operating permit of the French state-owned mining company, Uranium, which had long been exploiting uranium mines in the West African nation.
Well, in terms of the outcomes beyond the statements, beyond the MOUs and agreements that are signed, the objective of the Iranians and of President Raisi is really to reset relations and salvage ties with the continent in the wake of his predecessor, Hassan Rouhani, having neglected the continent while focusing on the Iran nuclear deal. And then subsequently with African countries, particularly those in the Horn of Africa, having severed ties with Iran in 2016. So President Raisi wants to send a strong message and signal to these countries that Iran is serious about resetting these relations.
The deal marks a significant realignment in Niger's foreign policy, signaling a departure from traditional Western allies and a pivot towards new partnerships with nations such as Russia and Iran. The ramifications of this transaction extend far beyond the African continent, stirring concerns and raising alarms in the United States and among other international observers who fear the potential acceleration of Iran's nuclear capabilities. But how does uranium play a role in politics? Uranium, a naturally occurring radioactive element, plays a critical role in both civilian nuclear power generation and military nuclear weapons development. The unique properties of uranium make it indispensable for these purposes, as it can undergo fission to release a tremendous amount of energy. This energy is harnessed in nuclear reactors to produce electricity and in nuclear weapons to create devastating explosive power. Given its strategic importance, uranium has always been at the center of global political and security concerns. Niger is one of the world's leading producers of uranium, possessing extensive reserves of this valuable mineral. Historically, Niger's uranium industry has been dominated by Western companies, particularly France's Uranium, which has relied heavily on Nigerian uranium to fuel its nuclear reactors. The economic and political impact of uranium mining in Niger has been significant, providing a substantial source of revenue for the country while also making it a key player in the global nuclear supply chain. However, the relationship between Niger and its Western partners has not always been smooth, with various tensions and disputes arising over issues such as revenue sharing, environmental impact, and labor conditions.
Uranium and its promise of a better future have faded. The people of Akokan and Arlit are to discover the consequences of 50 years of uranium mining in their region. The environment has been contaminated, and the traditional way of life of the Tuareg people has been changed forever.
However, Uranium has been mining uranium in Niger to power French nuclear plants for over 50 years. From 2005 to 2020, Niger ranked as the third largest source of natural uranium for France, providing 19% of its supply. Yet some in civil society want Uranium's permit revoked for their upcoming uranium project, the Imoaren mine. They argue the permit's no longer valid, Orano disagrees.
The permit is unlawfully held by Orano. In 2009, Areva obtained this mining permit through a mining agreement, under which they had an obligation to produce results, meaning to start operations within 3 years.
According to inside sources, the uranium deal between Iran and Niger was negotiated in utmost secrecy, reflecting the sensitive nature of the transaction. The agreement, reportedly worth $56 million, involves the transfer of 300 tons of refined uranium, or yellowcake, to Iran. This quantity of uranium is significant, roughly equivalent to Iran's domestic output in 2019. The deal's clandestine nature and its substantial scale have raised eyebrows and fueled speculation about its implications for Iran's nuclear program and global security. The influx of 300 tons of yellowcake is poised to significantly bolster Iran's uranium stockpile, potentially expediting its nuclear development efforts. Iran has long been suspected of pursuing nuclear weapons capabilities under the guise of a civilian nuclear program, despite its insistence that its nuclear ambitions are purely peaceful. The acquisition of additional uranium from Niger could enable Iran to accelerate its enrichment activities, thereby shortening the time required to produce weapons-grade material. This development is particularly concerning in light of the stringent international sanctions and agreements designed to curb Iran's nuclear proliferation. In simple words, this deal is going to help the sanctioned Iran.
Well, on the one hand, I think countries like Iran and Zimbabwe that are already under sanctions have less to lose by engaging in these interactions, as we've seen with Iran and Russia and other countries that are under the sanctions regime.
Exactly, what worse can happen than sanctions? So these uranium ties will in fact save the sanctioned nation's economy. But what will it mean for the West? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The decision by Niger's military junta to push out Orano and engage in a secret uranium deal with Iran signifies a dramatic shift in the country's foreign policy. Traditionally, Niger has maintained close ties with Western nations, particularly France, which has been a dominant player in its uranium sector. However, the recent political upheaval in Niger has prompted the junta to seek new alliances and assert greater independence from Western influence. By aligning with Iran and Russia, Niger is signaling its intent to pursue a more diversified and autonomous foreign policy. This shift is not merely symbolic, it reflects a broader trend among some African nations to seek alternatives to Western economic and political dominance. And the West is not happy about it. The West is jealous of both Iran and Russia, and has tried many ways to stop them from getting closer to Africa. But as Africa wants them both, the West finds itself helpless. Now the question is, what will the deal mean for Iran? For Iran, the deal with Niger is a strategic coup. Despite facing stringent international sanctions aimed at curbing its nuclear ambitions, Iran has managed to secure a substantial quantity of uranium, bypassing traditional supply constraints. This development could potentially expedite Iran's nuclear capabilities, heightening tensions in the region and beyond. The additional uranium could be used to fuel Iran's existing nuclear reactors, expand its enrichment activities, and potentially develop nuclear weapons. The strategic importance of this deal for Iran cannot be overstated, as it provides the country with a valuable resource that is essential for both its civilian and military nuclear programs.
Agency is the UN atomic watchdog. It has reported that Iran has begun using advanced centrifuges to enrich uranium. The watchdog said Iran informed them about the enrichment days after the failure of the latest round of talks to revive the stalled nuclear deal. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal limited Iran from enriching uranium beyond 3.67%. Prior to the deal, Iran was reportedly achieving 20% enrichment.
We know the West won't easily digest that, so what will be the reaction? The United States has been particularly vocal in its condemnation of the secret uranium deal between Iran and Niger. U.S. officials have expressed grave concerns about the potential consequences for global security, accusing Niger's junta of facilitating Iran's nuclear ambitions and destabilizing regional stability. Washington has called for a thorough investigation into the deal and urged the international community to pressure Niger into reconsidering its newfound alliances. The U.S. fears that the influx of additional uranium could enable Iran to accelerate its nuclear program, undermining international non-proliferation efforts and increasing the risk of conflict in the Middle East. The United States has been at the forefront of the international response to the uranium deal between Iran and Niger. U.S. officials have issued strong statements condemning the agreement and highlighting its potential risks. In addition to diplomatic efforts, the U.S. may consider economic and political measures to pressure Niger and Iran. These could include targeted sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and efforts to rally international support against the deal. The U.S. is also likely to intensify its monitoring and intelligence activities to assess the impact of the deal on Iran's nuclear program and regional security. And what about France? France, long a dominant player in Niger's uranium sector, finds itself sidelined and scrambling to reassess its position. The revocation of Orano's operating permit is a significant blow to French interests, both economically and politically. French officials have expressed deep concern over the security implications of Niger's shift towards Iran and Russia, highlighting the potential risks to regional stability. France may seek to engage with Niger diplomatically to salvage its interests and reassert its influence in the region. The loss of Orano's operations in Niger also has economic implications for France, as it relies on Nigerian uranium to fuel its nuclear reactors. Both France and the United States are, in simple terms, exhibiting signs of jealousy regarding the burgeoning relationship between Niger and Iran. This alliance threatens their long-standing influence and strategic interests in the region. To counter this development, they are employing a multifaceted propaganda campaign aimed at discrediting the partnership. To prevent the solidification of this alliance, both France and the United States are deploying a series of propaganda tactics. They are utilizing media outlets to highlight potential risks and downsides of Niger's partnership with Iran. Stories emphasizing instability, economic downturns, and political turmoil are circulated to sway public opinion. Also, they are engaging in back-channel diplomacy to persuade Niger's government officials to reconsider their relationship with Iran. This includes leveraging international organizations to issue statements or sanctions that could isolate Iran and, by extension, discourage Niger from pursuing the partnership. They are also offering economic incentives or threatening economic consequences to dissuade Niger from deepening ties with Iran. This can range from promises of increased aid and investment to warnings of reduced support or sanctions. The underlying motivations for this propaganda campaign are deeply rooted in the desire to maintain geopolitical dominance and secure economic interests. The prospect of Iran gaining a foothold in West Africa threatens to disrupt the balance of power and diminish Western influence in the region.
The United States was a lot more sneaky. If you think you know mid-century modern design, brace yourself, because its role in American propaganda is pretty crazy. But first, we got to talk about the father of modern propaganda, Edward Bernays. He wrote the book on manipulating public opinion with propaganda. Like, he literally wrote the book and it's called Propaganda. Bernays thought that humans were driven by base instincts and animal desires. He felt that the horrors of the world wars were proof of humanity's irrational and dangerous behaviors. His solution to our irrational nature was to harness these base instincts and redirect them towards something less destructive: consumerism. He focused on creating inner desires within people through advertisements and...
We know the West also gets support from international forums, and they also say the same thing that benefits the West. And what are they saying this time? The secret uranium deal between Iran and Niger has elicited varied reactions from the broader international community. The European Union, United Nations, and other global players have expressed concerns about the potential impact on global security and non-proliferation efforts. Some countries have called for increased scrutiny and oversight of Niger's uranium exports to prevent similar deals in the future. This comes as no surprise. Anyways, in a border view, what does this deal mean for Niger? For Niger's military junta, the uranium deal with Iran represents a calculated gamble. By leveraging its uranium reserves, Niger hopes to extract political and economic concessions from new partners. This strategy is not without risks. The country faces potential isolation from its traditional Western allies and the possibility of economic sanctions. However, the junta appears willing to take these risks in pursuit of a more autonomous and diversified foreign policy. Niger's strategic gamble reflects a broader desire among some African nations to assert greater independence and pursue new partnerships that offer more favorable terms and conditions. What's the underlying purpose of this deal? The underlying purpose of the Niger-Iran deal is multifaceted, deeply rooted in Niger's historical context and its aspirations for a more autonomous and balanced approach to international relations. Niger's history has been marked by significant foreign influence, particularly from Western nations that have dominated its uranium industry. For decades, France has maintained a stronghold over Niger's uranium resources, which are crucial for its nuclear energy program. This long-standing control has often left Niger with limited agency over its own natural wealth and economic policies. The United States, too, has established a significant presence in Niger, focusing on military bases and counterterrorism operations, further entrenching Western influence in the region. The current military junta in Niger is seeking to break free from this historical dependence and assert greater autonomy in its foreign policy decisions. This pursuit of autonomy is driven by a desire for greater control over its natural resources and a more balanced approach to international relations. By reducing its reliance on any single external power, Niger aims to foster a more independent and self-sufficient national identity. Forging new alliances with countries like Iran and Russia is a strategic move by Niger to diversify its economic and political relationships. These alliances are not just about securing alternative economic partnerships, but also about reshaping Niger's geopolitical landscape. By engaging with non-Western powers, Niger hopes to counterbalance the influence of traditional Western allies and create a more multipolar foreign policy framework. By partnering with Iran and Russia, Niger aims to attract new investments and technological expertise in various sectors, including mining, agriculture, and infrastructure. This economic diversification is intended to stimulate growth and reduce dependency on Western aid and investments. Building relationships with Iran and Russia provides Niger with additional diplomatic leverage. These alliances can serve as a counterweight to Western pressures, allowing Niger to negotiate from a position of greater strength and assert its sovereignty more effectively. Greater autonomy over its natural resources, particularly uranium, is a critical aspect of this strategy. By seeking partners outside the traditional Western sphere, Niger aims to negotiate more favorable terms for the extraction and sale of its resources, ensuring that a larger share of the benefits remains within the country. The Niger-Iran deal is also driven by broader strategic objectives. By diversifying its alliances, Niger hopes to contribute to regional stability. A balanced approach to international relations can help mitigate the risks associated with over-reliance on any single power, fostering a more stable and predictable geopolitical environment. Strengthening ties with countries like Iran and Russia can also enhance Niger's national security. These alliances may provide access to advanced military technologies and training, bolster Niger's defense capabilities in a region often plagued by instability and insurgent threats. On the global stage, Niger seeks to position itself as a more assertive and independent player. By engaging with diverse international partners, Niger aims to carve out a unique role for itself in global affairs, advocating for its interests and those of the broader African continent. In even a bigger image, the secret uranium deal between Iran and Niger underscores the shifting geopolitical dynamics in the Sahel region. As Niger moves away from its traditional Western partners and forges new alliances, it is reshaping the balance of power in the region. This shift is likely to have broader implications for other Sahel countries, which may also seek to diversify their alliances and assert greater independence. The changing alliances in the Sahel reflect a broader trend among African nations to seek alternatives to Western dominance and explore new partnerships with emerging global powers. And what does Iran getting closer to Africa mean? Iran's growing presence in Africa can alter the geopolitical balance on the continent. As African countries develop closer ties with Iran, traditional Western powers may find their influence waning. This shift can lead to a more multipolar world order, where African nations have greater agency and autonomy in international relations. Iran's involvement in Africa can have both positive and negative impacts on regional stability and security. On one hand, collaboration in areas like counterinsurgents and defense can enhance security capabilities in African nations. On the other hand, increased competition between Iran and Western powers for influence in Africa could lead to geopolitical tensions and conflicts. Africa's vast natural resources, including oil, minerals, and agricultural products are of great interest to Iran. Closer ties with African nations can provide Iran with access to these resources, which can fuel its own economic growth. However, this resource competition may also intensify rivalries between Iran and other global powers seeking to secure Africa's wealth. Do you think African ties with Iran are better than its ties with the West? Will this be beneficial in the long term? Let us know in the comments section. Who would locals prefer, Iran or West? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.